Marketing's certainly been a hot topic on the SiteShed podcast over the years. We've talked about many different marketing methods, many different approaches to traffic generation, lead nurturing, and all that kind of stuff. In today's podcast, we're taking a bit of a more granular look into the wonderful world of Google marketing. Now, we cover off on some of the things that a lot of trade businesses are not doing correctly within their targeting. We cover off on a lot of things that they could be doing better within their targeting. And we also cover off on a lot of the new features that have evolved over the years when it comes to Google's marketing platform. So things like banner ads and things like Google remarketing and things like Google My Business, local search, even Google Maps listings now you can market towards. So there's lots of little cool things that we've discussed in this podcast, and it's super relevant and customized towards trade business owners. The guest we have on the show is super qualified to talk about this. She has been working within the marketing space for a long time, and I know a lot of clients that have used her and absolutely rave about her services. Ilana is from Green Arrow Digital, and she actually spends most of her time these days in training and workshops. So unlike most a lot of guests that you might hear that have products and solutions they're trying to flog, that is not Ilana. Ilana is actually more interested in the education space, so there'll be links to her as well, where you can go and check out her stuff from the show notes. Anyway, if you guys enjoy this, and I know you're going to, do me a favor. I want you to do two things. The first one is I'd like you to send it to somebody that will benefit from it. Anyone that is running a business, a trade business, is going to benefit from this podcast, so please send it on. The other thing I would like you to do is head across to iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast, and leave us a review, please. It does help with our rankings, and it does help us keep on creating these amazing podcasts for the benefit of your wonderful selves. Anyway, that's all from me. Let's dive right into this podcast. Happy listening. The SiteShed podcast is made possible because of Tradie Web Guys, creators of beautiful websites designed specifically for tradies and contractors. If you're tired of dealing with web designers that have no idea about your industry, then head across to tradiewebguys.com.au and reach out. Like many companies from all over the place, you'll be very glad you did.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the SiteShed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Ilana Wechsler from Green Arrow Digital. Welcome to the SiteShed.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, it's good to have you finally. I know we've spoken in the past about getting you on the show and never eventuated, but thank you for sparing some time for our eager to learn audience.
It's my absolute pleasure. Any opportunity to talk about AdWords, I grab it.
Any opportunity to talk, I grab it.
It's true. Nice.
So for the listeners out there, Ilana and I met through a networking group years and years ago. Ilana is a Google Adwords specialist. However, before you switch off, Ilana does run an agency. However, they're not actually taking on clients. They're more interested in training and workshops. So I think that's a good point of difference there, Ilana. You're not here trying to pitch your services towards the listeners out there. You're more interested in teaching people on how they can learn the fundamentals and the basics to take a bit of control back, which is kind of what we preach with pretty much all of our solutions, actually, which is great.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Thanks.
We always had that belief where, and we invest in it we invest in it quite a lot. If we can help people understand the basics and the fundamentals, then they don't necessarily have to feel so dependent on people like us, unless, of course, they don't have the resource, and then that's when they'd fall back. But I feel like there's a lot of, you would know probably more than anybody dealing with AdWords. There's so much fluff out there in the marketplace, and I just feel like if people, across the board have a better understanding of the basics at least, then they know enough to be dangerous when it comes to either doing it themselves or outsourcing the task, knowing that it's going to be done correctly.
Yeah, and I think AdWords is a beast of an application, and there is so much you can do with it, and it's so versatile. But for many local kinds of businesses and your kind of listeners, like getting a big agency to do their AdWords is kind of like akin to, buying a Ferrari to go down to the local shop and buy some milk. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's often overkill because then, what they're going to do on AdWords is not that complicated, and there's no sort of funky remarketing campaigns going on and complex funnels. It's pretty vanilla. So that's kind of what we try and teach people, how to create some really simple, classic and vanilla campaigns that they can totally run themselves or one of their staff members, with a couple of skills up their sleeve, because there is a lot of noise in the market. But for most local businesses, all that noise doesn't apply.
Yeah, that's right. And I know, we've certainly covered, many episodes in the past on marketing and different types of marketing avenues and mediums, and we've covered AdWords in the past as well. And it always seems like there's, and I know we're going to get into this a lot more, but that it's such a highly competitive space for a lot of our listeners, mainly those guys that are listening in the the emergency service area. So your maintenance or emergency plumbers and your maintenance emergency electricians and all that kind of thing. And they find themselves over and over again coming up against these conglomerates of organizations that have just spending, and I know for a fact they're spending $200,000 a month on AdWord on budget alone without even management.
Yeah.
And it's kind of numbing and disheartening when they're a small 5-person company or less, and they're trying to generate traffic, and they're coming up against these magnates. So I'm interested to hear some of your strategies and ideas around how these smaller guys can get a bit of traction in that space, and without necessarily having to compete with the big dogs, so to say.
Yeah, and I think it's about going about it in a little bit of a creative way. Like I was telling you before we hit record, one of my previous clients used to be a plumber many years ago. And, when I started, we started bidding on Plumber Sydney, because I'm in Sydney, and it's like $50 a click. Like, it's insane. But now I'd never even bother bidding on Plumber Sydney. Like, I'm just not even going to engage in that crazy auction for that keyword. We just go left of field where there's significantly less competition, and therefore lower cost per clicks.
I think as well, for the listeners out there, if you're a little bit confused as to what we're talking about, so just a quick overview on Google AdWords, and what we're talking about there was search engine marketing. Is you run an ad and you pay every time somebody clicks on it. So what Ilana's talking about there is in this instance where you might be trying to compete on Google for Plumber Sydney as a search term. So when somebody types that in, you can get charged up to $50 for that person to even click on your ad. That's not a sale. That's not somebody who's gone ahead and bought from you, but that's to click on the ad alone. And when you take into consideration the fact that, your website may only facilitate, say you might need 10 people to click on the ad for you to get one qualified lead that turns into a sale or something like that, you're already out of pocket $500. So you've got to understand how that whole process works. And, we get a lot of people come to us and they say, oh yeah, we just want to dominate Sydney and we want to do this and that. And the funny thing is, Ilana, and you would be able to shed a lot more light on this than myself, but I found that a lot of these guys, and maybe even the mid-sized companies that want to compete on these, really, really highly competitive keywords, the reality is, even if if they had the budget to compete on it, they'd probably drop the ball in the delivery, because when you're talking about these massive keywords, you've got to make sure you can back it up. You've got to have the staff, you've got to have the resource, you've got to have all that kind of stuff, the systems in place that, get your technicians to the job. And a lot of times people just don't consider that.
That's right, exactly. I mean, you've paid a fortune to acquire these leads. If you can't service them, then that's the ultimate in waste. And my apologies before for using jargon. I'm sorry, my industry is littered with jargon, so I will try and minimize the use of it. I don't even realize I do.
No, I get caught up in it too, which is why I kind of have a little note here to pull myself up when I get carried away with it. But that is a reality. And I think one of the things that we've seen lately, Ilana, is a lot of people, and this may be sort of counterintuitive to, I suppose, your products and what you guys teach, but we find that so many of our clients come to us and they've got these, significant databases of customers that they've been servicing over the years. And they come to us with this churn and burn mentality of, I need more leads, I need more leads, I need more leads, which is fine. A lot of businesses do need, fresh leads, but we just feel, and we can actually apply a strategy towards these guys' businesses that help them re-engage with their past customers and present customers and the conversions and the cost to get to apply a strategy like that, as opposed to, running a Google Adwords campaign or something like that. It's like chalk and cheese. Like the conversions are so much higher from re-engaging with past customers. So I think there's a bit of a paradigm shift there as well with that whole churn and burn mentality. And I don't know. I mean, I only deal with the trades, so you probably would have a more of a macro experience across different verticals as to how that correlates. But I see it a lot in the industry, and it's comical at first, but then after a while you're like, hey guys, this is like seriously costing you money.
I know. And I had a meeting with a long-standing dental client, and so a dentist, and they were sort of, AdWords for dentists is also quite expensive. So they were sort of, there's not much I can do about the cost per click price, and
not much or nothing.
Nothing I could do about it. And I just started yes, they will always need fresh new patients, but the concept of the best customers are the ones that have come to you before and purchased from you before was new to these people, like a sort of fundamental marketing to really nurture your existing customers. Yes, you need new ones, but you need to nurture those existing ones because they're the ones who are likely to come back, more likely to refer you people.
Right. And I suppose as well, while we're on that, and it kind of ties into, I mean, the listeners out there are probably sick and tired of hearing me bang on about what I call the digital ecosystem and how, your website ties into your Google AdWords, and your Google AdWords ties into your SEO, and how your SEO ties into your content creation strategy, and how all this ties into, the logo on the side of the door on the truck and all this kind of stuff, right? There's a whole thing to consider there when you're talking at the end of the day about a conversion. But I see as well a lot of people wasting clicks, if you want to call it that, from an AdWords perspective when it comes to capturing and capturing those details once they get to whatever page it is you've sent them to and nurturing them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So a lot of guys spend a lot of money on clicks, and we find that, okay, that's great. You've got them to their page, and if they don't like what they see, then what are you doing about it? Is there a way they can opt in for something? Is there a pixel you can place? Can you remarket? Like all this kind of stuff. So I'm pretty keen to hear in your experience, and I'm sure the listeners are certainly as well, how they could probably get the most out of, like a paid marketing campaign for a, small to medium-sized trade business.
Yeah, cool. Alrighty. So I guess the first tip I have for people is a biggie, and one that I see people not doing all the time because I've probably audited thousands of AdWords accounts in my lifetime.
Sorry to hear that.
I know, exactly. Condolences, huh? And the one thing I see people don't do, and it just makes me shed a little tear every time I see it, is that they're not tracking all forms of leads. So they might have implemented conversion tracking. So for those of your listeners who don't know what conversion tracking is, it's the ability to track your leads or whatever is success to you. So somebody filling in the contact form is what would be called a conversion, or somebody signing up to the newsletter, etc. But you can also do phone call tracking with Google, which is free actually. So a dedicated Google number is swapped on your website, and it's redirected by Google to your actual number, leaving you the ability to track phone calls. So we often have multiple forms of conversion tracking for any one account, so we can see, who's called versus who's filled in the online form, and we're capturing all the possibilities of that lead generation going on.
While we're on that, Ilana, I know over the years we've worked with companies that I won't mention on air, but and they basically have a business built around call tracking. Are you saying now?
There are. Yeah.
Now it's free.
So there are paid call tracking companies out there. I believe the difference is they charge a monthly fee. How much, I don't know. I don't think it's huge. Maybe it's like $50 a month, but they record the calls for you, and there's sort of an extra level of analysis you can do.
Right.
But Google, I guess I would, you wouldn't want to have a call tracking company, because a few years ago, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, Google rolled out the ability to do that for free. But it doesn't have the ability to record the calls. But you do get some level of stats about it. You do know if the call was received or it was a missed call. Mm-hmm. You do know how long, the duration of the call and the area code. But other than that, that's all you know.
Okay. So typically the advantage in the past of running a tracking number on a website. And for the listeners out there, what we're talking about is the phone number where you would normally have your business phone number, and hopefully not your mobile, but probably your mobile on your website. That would get swapped out with a number which is responsive to search. Is that right?
Yeah. So what Google have done is they've said that only for the people who click on an AdWords ad.
Mm-hmm.
So if I use an example, just because it's easy to visualize with an example, if I'm bidding on Plumber Sydney, let's continue with that example, and someone types that in, they click on the ad, they go to my website, that number is different purely because they have clicked on an AdWords ad. Had they clicked on an organic listing, the number would not be that number. It would be their business number. But because they've clicked on the AdWords ad, that number is swapped for their Google number. And that's a dedicated number assigned to them. Like no one else is going to have that number.
Okay.
And when you set it up in the back end in AdWords, you basically say you don't actually know that number. Google doesn't tell you, although you could click on your ad and find out. Which I have done before to find out. But basically you tell Google, here's my actual phone number where you'll be redirecting that number to.
Yeah.
And so that number's different. And that way you have the ability to track those phone calls. And we find this a lot actually because we have a few clients that are lawyers actually. And what we find is it's very much like a desktop type of search, someone searching for a lawyer. It's not really what someone does on a mobile.
Right.
So if they're on their desktop at home and they search for Lawyer Sydney and they click on an AdWords ad and they go to the website and they have a look around the website and they think, these guys look good, I'm going to call them. They then pick up the phone and call. So there's a change of device going on. They've gone from their desktop to their phone.
Right.
Historically, you weren't able to track those people, but now they can because of that dedicated AdWords number.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so and with that, the purpose, I suppose, of employing such a strategy with a number or the call tracking number would be so that you can see what pages are converting better or what campaigns are working. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Like some people, when we sort of have discussions with clients about we want to do this, they're like, well, I'm getting the calls anyway. What's the point of like setting this up? And the point is, as you say, is to see what campaigns are working, to see what keywords are working, to see what search term they used, what they actually typed into Google that triggered them to pick up the phone and call, what ad copy is working. Like you get additional insights from an AdWords point of view of what's working and what's not working, which is invaluable. So yes, according to the customer, they're still getting the lead, but the level of information they're getting within AdWords is valuable.
Yeah. Okay. So once we've gone through that process and and I suppose we should clarify as well this kind of ties in as well to what I just spoke about before when we talk about the ecosystem and I know I've heard you speak about this in the past, but maybe you could just talk to the listeners a little bit about the difference between running a targeted ad campaign towards a specifically designed conversion page as opposed to a generic website.
Right. Okay. So continuing with the plumber example, if you'd ideally be bidding on specific services, so a block drain, for example. Mm-hmm. If you're bidding block drain, Plumber Sydney, maybe they go straight to that block drain page as opposed to sending them to the homepage where they have to have an extra level of navigation and they've got to work out how do they want more information. So it's about really ad relevancy and matching what someone's typed into Google with where they ultimately want to end up.
Yeah. So, yeah, guys, it's really important if you're going to be doing that. For any sort of campaigns, really, just make that customer journey as easy as you can for the customer, because the more steps they've got to take, the less likely they're going to be to take them. So if you're doing a hot water heater promotion, or if you're doing a LED lighting promotion or whatever it is, you want to make sure that instead of driving people to your homepage where they've got to go searching for the service you've spoken about, you want to be driving them to a specific page that correlates exactly to what they've seen in the ad. So if it's an LED lighting promotion, they get sent to that page and they can opt in through that page there. And I suppose the other advantage of that is as well, you can track conversions on that page, right? So you can see how many hits it's got and if it's working.
That's exactly right. And think of it like if you want to the people to that be like the last page that they're onto. So all the information they need is on that page. There's obviously the information about what your offer is or what the service is. There's the phone number in the top right-hand corner that they can easily click on or call. There's also a form on there, maybe on the side of every page or wherever it is at the bottom. So to think of it like its own mini website.
Yep. And they don't necessarily have to sit within the navigation, and they often won't, will they?
No, especially for responsive websites. People are on all these different devices and iPads. It's, but yeah, like you want to make it frictionless for people. You want to make it so seamless that it's so obvious and easy for them to contact you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So we've run ads. We've got people to a landing page, and then we're in a position, I suppose, where the customers or the potential customers, I should say, they can either engage our services, which may be calling the number, which may or may not be responsive, but hopefully is tracked as a tracking number, or they could complete a web form, in which case we get notified and we can follow up with them. Or maybe they don't go ahead with the sale and they navigate away from the website. What can we do in that instance?
Right. So what you're referring to is the technical term called remarketing. Many people don't know that the name of it, but they've experienced it nonetheless, where they've gone to a website and they've left, and then suddenly you start seeing ads for that particular business, like when you're reading a news article or on other people's websites. So that's making sure that you've got certain code on your website that gives you the ability to do that. And yeah, think of it like a second bite of the cherry. Gives the ability to continue that potential conversation with a potential customer.
Now, I've seen in the past it work a lot better for different, I won't say verticals, but maybe different businesses that have different solutions. For example, I found, and you would certainly know better than this, but you can enlighten me. For an emergency service, we found that a lot of people, they would come to that ad, they would click on it, they'd call the person because their sewer's overflowing and they haven't got time to worry about shopping around. Whereas where we found remarketing can be quite effective is in the space of people that don't necessarily offer an emergency service. It might be like a landscape care, or it could be a builder who does renovations and extensions and things like that. And there's a bit more of a lead time in that sales cycle.
Absolutely, yeah, I think you're spot on. Yep. We find that, we don't really bother remarketing to the emergency type work. As you say, it's very instant, it's very immediate, and, they're unlikely to want their broken sewer that's overflowing. They're unlikely to wait a week. If they haven't found someone, they've moved on to someone else. So, longer lead time type services are better suited for remarketing.
We interrupt this podcast today to talk to you very quickly about Tradies Web Guys' content creation program. That program has been designed specifically for trade-based organisations as a way that you guys as trade business owners can start creating content that enables you to engage better with your customers and your potential customers. It will enable you to build trust and build rapport, because what you're doing is you're investing in educating them. Biggest problem that we see with our customers today is that they're not regularly updating their websites. And that's a problem because, first of all, the search engines are looking for that. And second of all, potential customers are also looking for it. Tradies Web Guys' content creation program has been specifically designed to help you get regular, relevant content on your website consistently every month. We know that it's hard when you're out there on the tools, and we know that sometimes you don't always have the time to be able to do these things yourself. So we're taking it off your hands for you. It's a service that we're offering for you guys. We want to make sure that you're getting this done because we know how important it is. Anyway, head across to tradieswebguys.com.au/content, fill in the form, and one of our representatives will come back to you. There's certainly pros and cons, and there's right ways and best practice on how to go about remarketing. I mean, I know to this day, I still am amazed when I come up, I get pixeled on a site and I get retargeted to for months and months and months, until the point where you pretty much got to reset all your browser history and clear your cache and everything. So it's just insane. So I feel like there's a bit of a fine line between being useful and being a straight up pain in the ass.
Yes. So remarketing is done badly by many, many people. There's lots of no-nos when it comes to remarketing. And one of the biggest ones is, I think, is, like bombarding people for months on end, when you create what's called remarketing lists, which is sort of how you get access to those past visitors, you can set a time duration. So you can say anyone who's come to my page in the last for the last year or last 6 months or something. Personally, I like to do like 14 days. If they don't come back in 14 days, I take the hint.
Yeah.
You've found someone else, or that's fine, Yeah. No love lost. Let's move on.
Yeah. So for the listeners out there, if that is you and you're running you've got a business that does have a slightly longer sales cycle or something that's not necessarily what you would consider critical or an emergency, then you might want to look at some remarketing, because effectively what it could mean for you, if you had say you're a builder and you did do, first floor additions or renovations or, bathroom renovations or something like that, then what it would mean is you would, obviously that person that's coming to you, coming to your website, they're looking for a certain service or a certain offering, and chances are they're probably going to be looking around. So it sort of ties into the ecosystem as well, in the sense that, you've got to make sure that you made your first impression good when they get to your website. But, more importantly then, I suppose following up from that, how proactive are you being in putting your message in front of where they're heading after they visit your website? Yes, it is a little bit creepy, but the statistics speak for themselves, and it does work, doesn't it?
Oh, it works ridiculously well. And all those like amazing screenshots of ads where they've spent 5 cents and made X dollars are all remarketing campaigns. That's what they don't tell you.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't have to be creepy, and I think this is where you just kind of got to give it a little bit of thought to people. And like really you have to think about how, like if someone doesn't come back in a certain period of time, when do you want to turn those ads off?
Yeah.
You can also do what's called frequency capping, which is restricting the number of times you show someone that ad. So you can say, I only want to show someone an ad potentially one a day, because if you don't do that, it could be like up to 10 times a day, in which it gets really annoying. And you can also show them different banners, so they don't see the same ad over and over again. So there's sort of elegant ways of doing it versus, just throwing it against the wall. And you know.
Yeah. And for listeners out there as well, Ilana actually has a free training on that on her website, which you can get for a very short period of time because she's about to pull it down. But
it's true. Just telling you offline.
If you head across to greenarrowdigital.com, you can see that training there and you can get hold of it. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well in case you want to go get it. Okay, cool. So that's sort of covered off a bit on retargeting. What about local search against the old shotgun mass city search sort of style?
So this is what I do advise local businesses, is to really use local type keywords like suburbs, dentist Bondi Beach, dentist Manly Beach, etc. Something which dictates they're after someone very, very local. Mm-hmm. You will pay significantly less for that, as well as kind of mobile type keywords like, plumber near me, for example, with very, very tight location targeting. So anything that kind of dictates, and that's a big tip because that near me works really, really well.
Yeah, right.
So that's what people type in these days, because it's very much a mobile type query. Often for many kind of trades, it is a mobile inquiry versus someone on their desktop. And incorporating that into your keyword, you will pay a fraction versus like a plumber Sydney.
So I know there's been a lot of talk lately around optimizing keywords for speech. So when people are now starting to, hey Google, hey Siri, like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and as my phone goes off.
That's fantastic.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was wondering how that might look, from, not that it's hugely relevant, but I suppose I'm just trying to answer this my own curiosity at this point, how you would set up a campaign when you're really effectively targeting a spoken word.
Yeah, and this is where it's a constant changing space. Voice search is really, really new and it is growing rapidly. But that's where that kind of mobile type queries of the near me, insert whatever type of service or business you have, is a very, voice kind of query. But it is a very new space, and people like me are still kind of determining what people speak rather than type, because there's a massive area of growth in it, you know.
I remember not too long ago, maybe a month or a month and a half ago, I was driving down the south coast for a camping weekend with some mates, and I was heading down through a place called Nowra, which is a city just maybe 3 hours south of, 2 hours south of Sydney for the listeners that aren't familiar. And it was dinner time, and I said, I won't say it again because my phone will go off, but I said, hey, you know who? Are there any, or what are the Indian restaurants in Nowra? And all these searches came up, and I was like, this is so good. And
Wow.
then, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this is crazy. I'd never done it for that before, but, you know, when you've got like a tool like that can run through the microphone on your car and it connects to the screen on your dashboard, and you're like, what, this is insane. And you just push one button and bang, you're at this restaurant. I was like, this is amazing.
It's insane. We live in a crazy world now.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's bizarre.
And another kind of extension of that is I would also use those local kind of keywords in your ad copy. So when you're bidding on plumber Manly, for example, in your ad copy, you say you're a plumber in Manly. Because if you think about it, someone who's searching for a plumber in Manly doesn't want someone on the other side of Sydney, even though that plumber might be prepared to travel that distance.
Right.
You want to kind of get in the mind of that person who's searching for that plumber in that suburb and say that you are there, you know.
And one of the things that so we've got we do quite a bit of space in this bit of work in the copywriting space, both internally for clients, and we try and teach our clients when we build them websites. We show them how to, you know, create SEO-friendly content for their websites and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things we do is, and I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit, but we're jumping into basically the keywords and then associated keywords and then negative keywords.
Yep.
So a lot of people aren't familiar with negative keywords, but I actually had firsthand experience of this when I was running a pipe lining supplies company. And one of the products that we used to sell was, we used to call it's patch lining, but we used to call it patch repair. And I ran ads for patch repair, and I was just getting hits for all these people that were looking for how to patch up the holes in the knees of their pants, or all this kind of stuff.
Hilarious.
So I had to apply that as a negative keyword so that it wouldn't actually I wouldn't be getting paid for those leads.
That's funny. Yeah. So like typical negative keywords that we usually recommend for a tradie kind of business would be someone who's looking for a job. You know, so they're looking for a plumber job, or they want to know the salary that a plumber makes. So you'd add job or resume or intern or cadetship, internship, whatever it is, apprenticeship, salary as negative keywords, because, you know, most of them aren't looking to hire more people. They just want more customers.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of the keywords themselves, I mean, Google, I suppose this is probably a little bit more applicable to on-page content. You know, Google sort of nipped in the bud years ago that whole strategy where people were just cramming their web pages full of the one word so that it would show up in a search.
Keyword stuffing.
Keyword stuffing, right?
Yeah.
However, it is still relevant. You still do have to display your keyword on your page, and you still should display words that are associated with that keyword. So the search engine understands what it is you're looking for, and it can give it, you know, better credibility in search queries and that kind of stuff. Does that play into an AdWords strategy?
Or in terms of what keyword stuffing?
Well, no, I wouldn't. I mean, obviously you've got your focus keyword, which you're targeting for, but then, you know, within that, you know, that ad set, would you tie in, you know, other keywords that are not necessarily that focus keyword, but other keywords that are assimilated to them?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's especially in the beginning, it's very much a testing phase of understanding the language that your target customer uses. So you might have an idea in your head of what they type in, and what they actually type in are vastly different. You have to kind of go through what's called like a search term report, or what someone typed into Google which triggered your ad, and then possibly add those keywords as well. You know,
so that information is available.
Absolutely, and that's where the nuggets of gold lie.
Of course. Yeah, great.
Because there you're converting keywords, actually.
Right.
So this is the whole thing, like with SEO, is people say, I'm doing, they do SEO before AdWords, which is fine. Like I'm not criticizing SEO by any means. I think it definitely has its place in the world. But how do you know what keyword to optimize? You're only really guessing. Like you don't really know what keywords work and what keywords don't. So often what we suggest is to run AdWords first, find out what people actually typed into Google, which led them to call you. And they're the keywords to optimize for, because that's like actually what's called your converting keywords. If you know that it's generated a lead, and then often those keywords are quite easy to rank for because they're not your high traffic ones.
Do you find that there's a bit of a difference in what people are looking for organically as opposed to, through a paid ad? For example, I know, years ago I was doing a bit of research and we found that people were clicking on things like block drain Manly, block drain Mossman, block drain Securta. However, they weren't necessarily going to click on the longer tailed educational pieces that people might put together. So, how to 5 tips on how to repair or prolong the life of your deck in coming into winter, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I guess, it's so individual for the industry, but I think anyone who clicks on an ad is very, very focused on just finding a solution to their problem. They're very much like, they've got to scratch the itch, and that's why you've got to have kind of it very tight from an AdWords point of view. You've got to send them, as we spoke about before, to exactly where they want to go, because they're very solution focused. They've literally just typed into Google what they want, and this is your ability to slide your business card under the nose of them at the instant that they're looking for it.
Yeah.
But they have a 3-second attention span. So, so you've got to get them very quickly so that, you send them to the right place and there's all the elements on the page that are solving their problem straight away. Otherwise, if they don't find what they're looking for, they're just going to leave. The back button is there and waiting for them.
Yeah, yeah. The back button's next to the refresh button for a reason.
That's right. Exactly.
So we've spoken a little bit about local keywords, but I'd like to talk maybe, if you can, a little bit about some more local search in the space of maybe, the changes we've seen lately with Google Maps and Google My Business, for those people that aren't familiar, which would be a lot.
Yeah. So Google My Business, most I think businesses do have, which is where you kind of register your business, your local business with Google, and you show up in the places listing, which is completely separate to AdWords. But what we recommend people is to link your Google My Business to AdWords for 2 reasons. And the first reason is in AdWords, you can have what's called ad extensions, which are, as they sound, they're extensions to your ad. So in addition to your text ad that you have, you get extra lines. And so one of the ad extensions are location extensions, where you can have your address below your ad. So it's an extra line of real estate that you can take up, which we always advise people. If you can take, and it doesn't cost any extra, if you can occupy more real estate in your ad, then it's a win. But the second reason is a relatively new reason, which is Google have recently rolled out, came out of beta recently, is they're having ads in the Google Maps. But you need to have linked your Google My Business account with AdWords to be able to do that.
Okay.
So it's a relatively new thing. At this point, I have only ever seen maximum 3 ads in there. Usually it's only 1, but it's a great opportunity because, it's so local focused and yeah.
Excuse my ignorance here. If you're a builder in, say, Chroma, and you have a Google My Business page,
yep,
you need to connect that with your Google AdWords account.
Correct.
And then your business will then show up in a map search. So if somebody goes to Google Maps and types in builder Chroma or DY or something, then it will come up with an actual ad on the map.
Correct. But you do have to take that extra step of enabling the location extensions as an ad extension.
Okay.
So let's say you've linked your Google My Business to AdWords, but you don't go to ad extensions and enable location ad extensions, it won't show.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there's 2 steps.
Okay.
First step is the linking to AdWords, and then the second step is creating the ad extension of the location ad extension, and then it will show. Now, we've had instances before where we've done all that and it still hasn't shown, and it's because we hadn't bid high enough. I think at this point, it's still really, really new. At this point, it's only the ad in the number 1 spot is showing in the maps.
Right.
So what we did do is we increased the bids for mobile because we really wanted it for mobile rather than desktop. So
Gotcha.
that's the nuance that we did.
Okay, I was thinking that would have looked terrible on a map if you go to pull up a Google map and there's 50,000 ads all over it for people that are all
That's right. That's why they're look, Google is inherently a testing company. They're a data company and they are always testing new things. So this is new. And so, at the time of the recording, I've only really seen 9 times out of 10, one ad there.
Yeah.
But, no doubt Google will change as they do.
Yeah.
And it probably will be different if I listen to this in a few months' time. So, it's changing. But as of now, there's only one.
And interestingly, and a slight segue, I found out in the wake of this whole Facebook fiasco with all the data hoo-ha that's been carrying on lately, that all of the information that Google keeps on us individuals is actually publicly available.
Right.
I did not know that. You know what? I can't even back that up with the answer to your question where, but I do know that is what I recently learned. So that's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I did hear this story. Sorry to stay off topic, but I read this article. I don't know if it was true, but years ago that someone contacted Facebook trying to delete their account, and of course they couldn't, and then asked Facebook to send them all the information that they had on them, and Facebook had to do it. They were legally bound to do that, and they got this stack of like A4 pages on all the information they had about this person.
Really?
Like a thick stack. Which is insane. I know. And he was like shocked. As you would be. You'd be like, what?
Well, especially now. I mean, I know that that Zuck shot it down in flames when he was asked by one of those, what do they call them, the councillors or whatever they were that were putting him through that inquisition recently, which was laughable in its own right. But one of them did ask them about the what Facebook's policy on recording and listening to conversations. And you know what? He shot it down in flames, saying we periodically do not do that. That is just a straight up violation of privacy. However, I just cannot get over how often, and I don't know if it's because I've just got like a radar up and I'm looking for it, but I'll have a conversation with my wife or with friends or something. We're at a party, and the next minute and we've got to the point now where we actually screenshot these things, or we'll have stupid conversations about stupid things.
Yep.
Just so that we can see if ads pop up, and on a couple of occasions they have.
It's happened to me. They're totally listening. I like it. It's just, it has, I was talking with a friend on Skype, and he was telling me that he was going to the Book of Mormon, and then half an hour later in my Facebook newsfeed was an ad for the Book of Mormon.
You're joking.
And I sent him that screenshot, and I check this out. I mean, that's insane.
And you were listening so you were talking on a Microsoft program.
Yep.
And you got remarketed to on Facebook.
Yep.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
On Skype.
That is nuts.
Anyway, we're digressing here.
Yeah, totally. So where are we heading to next?
Okay, so Google My Business done. We have pretty much done, I guess, I don't want to bombard people with information, and I think we kind of covered lots of actionable stuff. So yeah, just to recap, make sure you're doing all the tracking. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't mention is make sure you have very tight location targeting. So that means restricting your ads for only showing in a geographical area. And we like to add in an extra layer of protection by excluding some locations. Mm-hmm. There is a little sneaky setting in there by Google that so going on the Plumber Sydney example, right? If, let's say, I'm in Melbourne and I'm searching for Plumber Sydney, theoretically your ad can still show. So we like to turn that sneaky little setting by Google off because we don't want people in Melbourne. And there's other locations that the same suburb exists. So, yeah, we like to add an extra layer of protection by excluding locations.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Okay, and so as a starting point, what would you recommend to the listeners?
As a starting point for what?
For paid marketing.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
Speak to an expert.
No, I think it's totally doable to do yourself or to get someone in your team to do it. I would definitely say educate yourself a little bit first. Don't go in completely cold thinking, oh, yeah, how hard can it be? I'll just wing it, because I do see those accounts that there's so many little settings that people don't realize that are designed intentionally by Google to make
stump you.
Not to stump you, to fool you into doing, reach more people by doing this setting. And it's just honestly designed to make Google more money and you waste money. Like, it's really for no use. So yes, you can absolutely do it yourself, but you've got to get yourself a little bit of education first to know what those, I call them the Google landmines, are, so that you can avoid those landmines.
It's interesting because I know in the past I've run AdWords campaigns and I just found it was such a full-time job. Like, I know you're saying you can do it yourself, but I just got to the point where I was just so happy to pay someone to do it because it was just, I just didn't have the time to do it. It just felt like I was always just in there trying to improve and optimize, but maybe that's not the case anymore.
Look, it is a bit of a beast of a platform, I'm not going to lie, and there is some learning involved, but once you learn like the basics and, as I said, like, often for these local type businesses, you're only going to run 2 campaigns, like one targeting certain suburbs and one very general type stuff with very tight location targeting. Like, It's not going to be complicated stuff. So it's individual. Like, it's not set and forget. I'm not going to lie that you set it up and you create it and you walk away and you never have to log in again and the leads just come rolling in. No, absolutely not. I'm not going to paint that illusion either. But for small accounts that are spending, $1,000 a month on ads, it's not a lot of work to keep it in tune and humming nicely.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think that pretty much draws to a close, unless there's anything else you wanted to cover.
No, I think at the risk of overloading people with too much information, which I know can be a disservice for some people, I think we've covered the important things.
So for the listeners out there, greenarrowdigital.com is Ilana's website. You'll be able to get to these links within the show notes also, by the way. You are at Green Arrow Digit across social media, or for your Twitter anyway. That's digit, not digital. So at Green Arrow Digit, and facebook.com/Green Arrow Digital is the Facebook page. Again, there is depending on when you hear this podcast, you may still be able to get access to the remarketing course. And if you missed it, then stiff shit, I'd say. But otherwise, it is available there. So head across and get it while you can. And, of course, there are a plethora of courses that you can also partake in through the website.
We've got training courses, obviously, as well as we talk about a lot of free stuff as well on our podcast, which
of course,
you will be coming on as well.
Yes, which is...
Talking Web Marketing, it's called.
Talking Web Marketing, okay. And that's, I'm guessing, available through all of your typical podcast listening mediums, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, blah, blah,
blah. Only at iTunes at this point.
Okay.
We're in the process of rolling it out. So hopefully by the time of this recording, it's on those other platforms.
Yes, it will be, won't it?
It will be.
It's as simple as flicking a switch on your host and it's done. Anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Well, Ilana, thank you very much for your time. For the listeners out there, if you do have any follow-up questions, of course, you can post them wherever you see the link to this podcast, which may be in social media, or you can reply to the weekly email, which you can also subscribe to at thesiteshed.com. That's our Toolbox Talks. And if there's anything pressing that we need to get Ilana back on the show for, I'm sure she'll be willing to come back on and put those queries to rest.
Yeah, sure. Happy to.
All right. Well, thank you once again. And for the listeners out there, that is a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.